Well, good morning. I have an epic day planned for you. Here I am looking at Duffy Lake because I am taking you on the Duffy Lake Road Loop. Starting in Abbottsford, we headed up past Chilliwack to Hope, up past Hell's Gate, from Boston Bar to Lytton, which was burnt recently, out to Lillooet, and I went out a little bit further because the road was so nice, and then continued on down past Duffy Lake, over to Pemberton, down to Whistler, the famous ski site, and down the Ski-to-Ski Highway to Vancouver, cross through Vancouver and back to the ferry terminal to get home to Victoria. For the first part of my journey, I'll be traveling Highway 1 eastward towards Hope and then northwards towards Lytton. This route follows the mighty Fraser River as it winds its way through the many mountains of BC. The first part of the journey goes through the Fraser Valley, and this area was completely flooded in November of 2021. Floods and landslides not only filled the valley, but it also filled roads through the canyon. The floods and landslides ended up destroying over 100 kilometers of road, but BC was surprisingly quick at being able to restore them. Kudos to all the hard work that went into that. Here we are in Hope, and it has a nice waterfront park along the front. Hope's real claim to fame, though, is the Sylvester Stallone movie, First Blood, which was filmed here. Leaving Hope, we cross the Fraser River again. We'll do that a few times on this trip. The road from there leads us to the small town of Yale, and I'm always reminded of a time a person from Germany that we knew, Freetown, came and riding his bicycle through the roads from Calgary to Vancouver, and he was surprised. In Germany, traveling any distance at all, you always encounter all these small towns. There's not so many of them here in BC, so the journey was a lot more isolated than he was expecting. There are plenty of towns for fueling up, though, for a motorcycle. One of the attractions along this route is a visit to Hell's Gate. This is where a large rock, a boulder, crashed into the river, created a very narrow chasm. It's an interesting experience, but quite expensive. Well, it's been pretty smooth sailing up until now. It's 10:45 in the morning. There's definitely a few campers, people getting an early jump on the long weekend, but not a lot of traffic. But here we are, stopped. Road construction. It's got to be done. It's the bane of travel in the summer. You can't do it in the winter months, so it's got to be done this summer. That's when everybody wants to be out on the road. Anyway, there was some warning for this. They said it's a long one. I think it's a 3-kilometer stretch, they said. And I haven't seen any traffic coming the other way. I imagine it's single lane, and they're letting just one lane through. Well, it ended up being about a 15 to 20 minute wait, and so to pass the time I ended up talking to the guy behind me. He had quite an interesting rig. He had a big truck pulling a big camping trailer, nothing too odd there, but he had his truck tailgate down, and he had 2 ATVs in the back, and he had reinforced the tailgate so that it could support more weight, and he also had a canoe on top of his trailer. And in order to get the turning radius properly done on his travel trailer, he had to extend the front end, the tongue part, I guess, and that had to be re-welded so that he could still turn with it. It was one real adventurous rig. And he was headed off to Green Lake, and I didn't know where that was, but I looked it up later. It's by 70 Mile House, and it's a beautiful area. But it turns out about 3 years ago I rode my motorcycle right through there. So there you go, I've got some pictures to show of it. Well, I mentioned flooding earlier, but in June of 2021 there was also a huge fire here at Lytton. So Lytton is a small community in BC. It's about 250 people live there, and about 100 and so buildings in the downtown core, so to speak. And in June 30th, there was a wildfire. So June 29th, they had the highest temperature ever recorded in Canada, and it was here at Lytton. It was 49.6 degrees Celsius, or 121 Fahrenheit. And when that fire came in here, it destroyed 90% of the town. And in the time since, there's been a lot of wrangling between some people who wanted to rebuild right away and others who wanted to make sure there's a fire protection plan. And it kind of stalled things somewhat. So, like this area here, believe it or not, used to be the core of the town. It's all blocked off here as they're trying to rebuild. But like I came in here and like, what is this place? I don't recognize this area. And it took me a sec to realize, oh, this is actually Lytton. I've ridden through Lytton so many times, and it's unbelievable the damage that was done here. So they've cleared it out, and hopefully they'll get rebuilding in earnest soon, because you know this was an important hub, and it's in an interesting area. It's right where the Thompson River meets the Fraser River. So you have, I'm going to go over that bridge shortly here, but it's a neat area. There used to be a lot of whitewater rafting that was based here, and that was also wiped out. So it was a horrible incident for all those people that lost their homes and potentially are still suffering. I hope they manage to get everything sorted out. Well, remember the floods I talked about? Here's where landslides washed out a section of the road. So it's all gravelly right now, and another section just up here. So obviously the mountains here are quite steep. To the left is the Fraser River, and yeah, it just wiped out parts of the road here. So 2021, difficult year. Fires in the summer and flooding in the late fall and winter. You can see the erosion off the mountain on the right hand side of the road. Whenever you build a road on the side of a mountain, going through a mountain pass, you're going to get a lot of rocks falling down. It's just inevitable. And this section has more than its fair share. You can see a lot of stuff on the side of the road. Obviously they clean and sweep it. Some sections of the road they'll have wire mesh set up to try to limit the rock fall getting all the way down to the road. Mountain pass roads are great for motorcycles though. There's always lots of twists and turns and some just truly excellent views. I mean, look at the snow-capped mountain peaks on the far side, and yeah, this is living. This stretch between Lytton and Lillooet is known as Highway 12. It's a great jog, but it is a bit fraught with danger. About 15 years ago, when I was traveling this road, I discovered that part of the road had caved in. So instead of being one lane each way, there was really only the inside lane left. The other lane was gone. At the time, they'd put a cone on the road and a little sign saying caution, and that was it. I came around a corner and discovered I don't have a lane. So that was kind of interesting. So this is that spot now. There's no doubt been continued problems. You can see that the erosion continues on the road, but there was really no place to expand the road. So they've had a lot of trouble. They've got some guardrails up, and it's basically a couple of sections here where it's one lane for both the ways traffic, and not quite what you expect for a highway. But anyway, 15 years later and still no perfect solution, but at least the cars can get by. There's some great views of the Fraser River here to our left. The Fraser is the biggest river in BC. It's the longest in length. It's 1,375 kilometers long, which is about 850 miles. And it starts far in the north. I think it might even start as far as Alberta, and kind of heads northward and then circles down south before ending up in Vancouver. Normally at Lillooet, I would turn southwest along Highway 99 towards Duffy Lake, Whistler, and Vancouver to complete the Duffy Lake Loop. But it was sunny today, and the stretch of Highway 99 northeast of Lytton, which continues along the Fraser Canyon, has a lot of spectacular turns and views. And I thought, why not? I've got the time. I always enjoy that ride, so I thought I'd go and try it out. And as you can see, lots of great twists and turns. There's a little narrow section here going through the bridge. Now my plan was to just do in and out, just travel down the road a ways and then travel right back. But on the way, I discovered this patch of road repair. Now, normally they do something like chip seal. This was something different. It was gravel down instead of road. They were probably going to replace the surface of the road eventually. But they put something on it. I thought maybe it was just water they'd wet it down with. And you can see after back on the pavement how long it takes before the residue is wiped off. Anyway, I turned around shortly after, but lo and behold, if that stuff didn't stay with me for the rest of the trip. It was really difficult to wash off. It was quite sticky on the underside of my motorcycle. Anyway, I returned back to Lillooet and on to Seton Lake and the Seton Lake Reservoir, BC Hydro electricity dam. And you can see how they've got these narrow bridges. They're single file bridges. You have to watch yourself because traffic can only go in one direction at a time. And here we are having to stop for someone going the other way. It's easy sometimes to forget that because there's not that much traffic, but you come to one of these bridges, you better know who has the right of way. And it's whoever gets there first. Climbing up into the mountains, I'm reminded that this is one of the best stretches of this road. You get to see the snow-capped peaks, you get to see the valley views, you get to see forest views, and of course there's lots of twisty roads to keep a motorcyclist entertained. And that, of course, is documented here, because what do you see but one of my favorite signs, steep winding road. Yahoo! Let's go. Sometimes I think signage is overdone. There's err on the side of caution and all that, but this isn't one of those places. You'd better pay attention to the signs and you'd better pay attention to the road because there's definitely some good turns here to travel on. Well, I was having a great time on these roads, but I was also carefully watching my odometer as well as the view, and for a very good reason. And fortunately, there was this pullout right at the appropriate time because my bike is Canadian, so it's in kilometers. And right here, I came up and I'm at exactly 100,000 kilometers. That's pretty cool.